Puss in Boots might have been the biggest surprise I've had when walking into a film in a very long time. Before this movie came out in cinemas in the UK, I had no intention of going to see it. I didn't even know it was going to be coming out. However, I did end up finding out around about a week before release here in the UK, and that was because of TikTok. I never thought I'd be saying this, but I think TikTok might have actually done something amazing for me. I kept seeing all of these edits of the character that we later learn is Death and Puss in Boots constantly. The eeriness of almost every single shot I saw of Death and the sincerity of many of the different characters within this film was really drawing me in. I kept seeing more and more of these edits, which eventually led me to just surprise my girlfriend and say that her Valentine's date was us going to go see the new Puss in Boots film. Before all of this though, we had been doing weekly movie nights, where recently the set of films that we had just been watching were all DreamWorks films, so this was in a way just perfect timing. Over the course of 3 weeks, I watched all 3 of the Kung Fu Panda films, which for me, I hadn't watched the last one at all, so overall, I can definitely say that it was actually good fun to go back and watch that, and I hardly remembered anything of the second film, which was an absolute blast to watch. Doing this sort of movie night really reminds me of actually why I enjoyed media studies so much in school, and why I actually love movies. But I think that might be for an entirely different video. The point that I'm making with all of this is that it just kind of felt like everything was aligning for me to just go watch this film and it to hit different for me. What I'll discuss first is going to be the original film, which I hadn't actually watched up until the day after having seen The Last Wish, and I definitely have to say that this film is definitely not as good as its sequel. However, I think it's actually got a genuine reason for that. The first film was made back in 2012, and it was definitely directed specifically for kids way more than The Last Wish was. But also, this film has the typical hero's journey in a way, and did that perfectly fine. I think the introduction of Kitty SoftPaws within this film felt great as a way of making Puss have more of an emotional connection with the audience, without it feeling as if she was just a cheap attempt of a side character that added zero value, but instead actually added a great load of value to his story and his journey at mass. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning all of this is because the first film is definitely targeted way more towards kids than the second film. The second film is 100% targeted at people who grew up watching the first film, general adults, and overall just having a more mature theme, but it's wrapped up in what is considered a more Western kid-like animation. I think I could definitely make a video talking about the whole Western view of animation and how, for some reason, over in the West, the type of animations that we watch always feels really kid-like, whereas, anything from the East always feels more mature in a way. But this film does share the overall hero's journey, and for me to discuss this, I think we actually need to now go ahead and talk about the main themes of this film and go into and discuss the plot. So spoilers are ahead if you haven't watched the film, but if you don't care about spoilers, sit back and enjoy. The film will start off with Puss having a massive party with a bunch of people who clearly absolutely love him for the hero that he is meant to be. And after the person who owns the place that they're partying in comes back, a load of stuff will go down. He'll end up fighting this massive giant rock thing. I don't really remember the name of it. However, this all leads up to the first beginning part of the hero's journey, but done in slightly a different way. Normally in a hero's journey, it's the thought of adventure first. However, in this, they go for the kind of rebirth of the character due to him dying and losing his 9th life. But this will bring us into what is the main overarching theme of this film, which is death, and more in particular, running away from it. Now, not necessarily always in the sense of the word, but also the character itself, who is the metaphorical, incarnation of death. He's pretty much just the Grim Reaper all round. So because of this, Puss ends up having to deal with the fact that he has used all of his lives up and is now very vulnerable. This causes him to go into a massive panic attack, which eventually leads to him retiring to the crazy cat lady. During this though, he'll end up meeting Perrito, aka the cute little dog tag-along that they have within this film, and I'll talk about him later on so we can quickly get through this bit. Goldilocks, played by Florence Pugh, which I must say she did a great job of in this film, and overall just acting capabilities are really showing through. A lot of Marvel characters, for example, or people who blow up through Marvel, have this tendency of just kind of being locked in of those positions, so yeah, I've got to say she did a great job in this film. But her character and the bears will end up showing up after having tracked down Puss to this area, wanting to basically hire him on for this quest of finding the last wish. Which again, this is the next step in the hero's journey, the call to adventure which brings him back to his old self. So he doesn't necessarily go through the full rebirth stage just yet, but it's the starting steps from earlier on. On his way, we'll end up meeting Jack Horner, who's just kind of like the main villain in a way, but not really. More of a sub-villain for the overarching villain being Death. Puss's fight with Death is like the main overall thing when it comes to the biggest villain of this film. After this though, Puss will end up reuniting with Kitty's SoftPaws, and after a failed heist, we'll end up following all of the characters in their attempt to get to the last wish. We end up learning later on what all of them are actually wanting to wish for, which in a way I've kind of viewed as all of them are wishing for different things that kind of all correlate to just being a human and just basic human requirements or believed requirements. And to me, I think the overall thing of all of their wishes is that they just kind of want to feel whole overall and also safe. Puss wants to wish for his 9 lives, Kitty wants to wish for her ability to have someone around her that she can trust, Goldilocks wants to wish for a normal family, and Jack Horner wants to wish to become the most powerful person to make up for what he believes was childhood trauma. We end up seeing all the characters come to the end of their journeys, and the 2 main themes of this film become whole. And the first theme, like I mentioned, is the fear of death coming from Puss's side of the story, but Goldilocks' story ends up giving us the second theme, which is being happy with what you have, and in this instance, it's focused towards the family she has instead of seeking for the one she wants. Now the last theme that I actually think doesn't get touched on too much in different videos is Kitty's story within this, which is allowing yourself to kind of be vulnerable in moments and find someone that you can actually trust. All of the wishes are linked to the themes of this film. Even Jack's theme, I would say, his overall thing is that he just wants to become more powerful as someone could be, for this overall desire as if, you know, he has been treated wrong in the past and this will solve all of his issues. With this film though, I think those 2 main aspects, the fear of death and being happy with the family you have, are really targeted towards the adult audience who either grew up with the film or around the time the film came out. Even though I don't personally deal with this particular fear myself, I do deal with the actual fear of losing others around me. Because of that, I think the film was able to really highlight for me personally what I already knew to be true, but deep down I wasn't really wanting to admit, or at least I wasn't wanting to accept, which is that there is no reason to fear death, because at the time when it's going to be coming, all you can do really is confront it and accept it. There's no actual reason because you can't change it. And the idea of being happy with the family you've got is also another great message that this film is trying to push to kids, but also the parents, and even me, someone who doesn't have kids, but I do end up having a chaotic family from time to time, so it's definitely something I can take to heart myself. It's all about being happy with your family, even if they are all vastly different from you, and just understanding that they have been there for you in all the moments they have been vital, from birth, or in this case, bare adoption, to where you are now. You owe them at minimum respect and love. Don't try to replace them or wish for something that could be called a better life, because you know the saying of the grass is always greener on the other side turns out to be true probably 0% of the time. Now the last part that I want to touch on, which isn't necessarily a theme within this film, but I'd say it's just a moment that really hit me, which was this moment between Puss and Death, where Puss will end up being told by Death, "Are you going to be taking the coward's way out to more lives?" as he's there holding up the piece of paper that he can end up taking out his last wish for. And the reason why it hit home for me is that a couple of months ago I left my completely secure job to go full-time in trying to pursue what I've been trying to do as my dream since I was 9, which is this YouTube channel. And that was a massive leap for me, and I'd definitely say this line in particular made me feel this idea that's been brewing inside of me come to light, which is not allowing my inner critic to win and take the safe route, in a way the coward's way out. The mental battle that I've been facing with my fear of failure around this idea and going back to my secure job way before I've even truly given this a proper chance. I'd rather fail and go back to the secure job after having actually tried than taking the coward's way out and never knowing if this was something that could have worked. What I want to talk about next is going to be Puss in particular within this film, and he has truly done amazingly well. Even more so than I can remember him being in any of the Shrek films or even in the first film when I watched that. He was funny within this film, but he was also able to emotionally connect the audience. Many times throughout this film, I felt the feelings that he was going through, the panic attacks that were just a mere thought of death, and the feelings as if you can't talk to the close ones around you about the issues you're facing. I think this film did a great job at personification. He is a cat that truly feels like, I would say, the average guy out there. The feeling as if you're fighting the world all by yourself, and the feeling of shame around you to open up about any of the issues you're facing. What I think was great was the true push that took Puss to actually realize and take on his fear of death was finally admitting his fear and learning that simply the woman, or the cat in this instance, just wanted him to be there for her and someone she could trust. The effective reconnection of the feminine in this film really brings Puss back to balance, I would say, in his fight especially against death, which I think is more of where you get things like the dagger scene in the film, when later on, he uses it within that fight, and it's in a way like him effectively using a part of her in this method. Instead of self-containing his fears, he opens up about them, he admits them, and she admits hers back to them. They're both vulnerable together, but neither one of them feel as if they are being brought down by their vulnerability. None of it was done in a way to feel as if men were being put down, or that you needed to open up about your feelings more, but simply being okay with trusting others who actually have the best intentions for you. Now, I think Kitty SoftPaws and Perrito in this film are also perfectly done. I'd definitely say, as a British person, Perrito's overly positive vibe at times does feel a little bit over the top. That's just because we're overly cynical here. But this character is meant to be a massive juxtaposition to Puss's hard shell and exterior that doesn't think the best is going to happen in these moments. He truly becomes what he actually wanted to be, which was the therapy dog. His character was able to allow Puss to explore this part of him without it feeling as if it was a therapy session, but simply being a happier presence added to Puss's life. Kitty is another character who isn't actually a juxtaposition to Puss, but simply the other side of the same coin. She is struggling and has been struggling with the fact that herself and Puss have both abandoned their own wedding. Both of them rejected what they were both truly desiring, which for Puss was this sense of not being alone, and for Kitty was the same, but also adding in the fact that she just genuinely wanted someone she could trust, and not having to feel as if she was on edge every moment of her life and having to be alone. She brings her own presence to the story that perfectly synergizes with Puss's story, which eventually leads to the payoff of all of them feeling happier with what they have and accepting one another without the fear of death or the fear of abandonment. Now, I don't think I could be making a video about Puss in Boots: The Last Wish without mentioning the Giga Chad that is death. Now, honestly, I have to say that he's one of the best villains I've seen in such a long time. To me, he had the same effect that I felt whenever Thanos was on screen in the MCU build-ups to eventually go into Infinity War and Endgame, which was every time he was on screen, he just grabbed your attention instantly. His character is the presence of a villain. He was able to invoke fear into the hearts of the viewers and Puss alike. At minimum, he was at least an absolute badass. Or at maximum, absolutely terrifying for some of the kids in the theatre that I was in. Yeah, I genuinely was surprised that some parents brought their kids to this film, because there was literally 3 or 4 year olds genuinely crying when death came on scene, quite surprising. There are many different things, from the fact that during this film he appears to be in the background of what's going on, he doesn't appear on the map as well, and this just shows that he was only there for Puss and is simply death as a concept and not a being. His role within this film isn't to kill Puss or even scare him, simply to actually make him value his own life and be more than the hero he believes himself to be, and feel genuine happiness with living his best life in his last life. Not some mediocre coward's existence as a crazy cat lady's 1000th cat. This film, in my mind, is the perfect way to blend a kid's film into an adult's film. It had the darker tones that the adults can actually find value in, but also gave those elements that make kids not too scared to watch, but like I said earlier, some kids were genuinely crying. It's the perfect medium between both of these realities. Overall though, this film, in my mind, is one of the best DreamWorks films, if not the best DreamWorks film, and or the best Western animated work of art I have seen. And I honestly, that is actually something that is genuinely surprising, because I think a lot of us end up feeling as if, the old films we watched when we were younger, there could be nothing that beats them, but I would genuinely say this film does so much right that it's hard to even find a negative. The only negative that I could think of, and this was after quite a while of thinking, was that the animation style every now and again was being changed, but really it didn't make too much of a difference, and it made the choice to go in there with that bit for the actual impact of what they were showing. It wasn't necessarily a oh no, we've lost the budget, so we're having to change the animation style. It was literally we're doing this in certain moments to kind of emphasize whatever's happening or make whatever's happening look cooler. Now though, if you guys have enjoyed this video, make sure to let me know down below. This is the first film video essay in a way that I've done. It was great fun actually scripting this video. I woke up at 11 o'clock at night and I just thought of I need to do this script. So I sat there, did the whole script in one sitting, and really enjoyed this overall film as well, going to the cinema and watching this. Like I said earlier, this brought me back to my feeling of why I loved things like media studies in my school, but also just watching films, and it's definitely going to be the first of many video essays that I do. I don't know if this video will stay on this channel forever, because it's going to be uploaded to the Exiled channel originally, but to be honest, if it doesn't do too well, I will probably upload it over onto the other channel that I want to make into like a video essay sort of channel, or it will go over there straight away, but who knows. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like, do subscribe for more content, and I'll see you guys next week. Have a good one.